to a show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats podcast. And today on the podcast, I want to welcome a guest who I, interact with their content through Instagram, which most guests I do. But this one is special because they do a lot of work with the community and outreach and giving. So I'm always seeing their content and reposting and getting tagged in as well. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. So I'm happy to have on a podcast today, co-founder of Guardian Gym, Mr. Ben Kovacs. Hey, Ben, what's up, man? Thank you for doing this. And how are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
No, I'm happy that you're able to make the time and get in here. And, thanks to David Reedman as well, who connected all of this. He mentioned to me one day, it was like, I think I'd done a repost of yours. He goes, hey, I could connect you guys if you like. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And he just basically sent an email, said, hey, I can't wait to hear you guys' interview. Like, Ben Dante. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And here we are. So with Guardian Gym and just kind of all of what you do, how did you come up with the idea of just saying, hey, let's start this gym up and give back to the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty simple concept that a lot of jiu-jitsu guys have, which is, hey, this has changed my life tremendously. Wouldn't it be great if more people could have access to this type of thing that's given me so much joy and happiness and health in my life? I think the difference probably between me and some other people is like I just kind of took the first step and did it. I didn't have a lot of experience, didn't have any experience running a nonprofit, didn't have any experience opening a jiu-jitsu gym. But my original co-founder, Joel Lunenfeld, and myself, we were working at Twitter at the time, and we saw how much money was being wasted in the Bay Area on all sorts of programs, mostly related to trying to fix a problem when it was too late, right? When someone had, some mental health issues and was sleeping on the street or was addicted to fentanyl or was already incarcerated because they had murdered someone or violently assaulted them. A lot of money was getting thrown at those problems, but like very little money was getting thrown at the, like, how do we help a 12-year-old kid not go down that same path and have those have less of a chance to have those problems happen in their life? And I know it sounds callous, but like there's only so much money to go around. And there's only so many resources. So our big bet was like, why don't we pull a smaller amount of those resources forward and give it to kids earlier in their life to make a difference so they don't end up in those situations later on. And that's how Guardian started. One gym in Oakland. It eventually grew to a second location in Baltimore, Maryland. And then from there, it started spreading around the world after a few years. And we now have 31 academies in many different countries and continents. And we are the main charity partner for CGI2 this year, which we're really excited about. So I think that's going to be like a massive lift for the organization there to spread the word even farther. And, our goal is that every kid in the world someday has the opportunity to try and do jiu-jitsu if that's what they want to do, regardless of their financial limitations.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I always say to my wife, and kind of what you just said there is like, you didn't have any experience opening a gym or anything like that. You took the first step and, you found a way, you made it happen. I always say to my wife, we're sitting around, it's like, man, if I had resources or money or something, like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I want to like give jiu-jitsu to like, kids. Cause growing up in Flint, I remember there was like a little community center behind my school. We'd always go there and play basketball. And I looked it up recently and it was closed down. And I was like, wow, that's really sad, especially in Flint, because there's not much going on up there, for the kids especially. And it was like, man, like having something like jiu-jitsu up there would be awesome. Just something like at the Brennan Center, it's like, hey, come through and, we can work with these kids in the neighborhood and, give them an activity to do, give them something to focus their energies into, you know, rather than sitting around playing video games, which it's not always a terrible thing, but a lot of times, you know, kids grow bored with that and end up growing up and then, you know, roaming the streets and getting in a lot of trouble. And like you mentioned, you know, drug addiction becomes a problem further down that line. So, you know, catch them young. That you know, and it works on the opposite end. That's how a lot of times kids get in trouble, is they get caught young. So you went to the other end of the spectrum and, you know, helped them young. So it's really, really awesome, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Looking at one of the posts, I remember a while back, I saw that there's the setup here in Baltimore. I think I, you know, look at a lot of content, but as I'm like checking it out and reposting it, you know, it never really clicks until like after the fact. I was like, oh, Baltimore. Wait a minute, I'm in Baltimore. You know, like, well, near Baltimore. I was like, oh my God, that's really cool. Because again, when I'm mentioning this kind of stuff to my wife, I'm like, you know, Baltimore, Detroit, you know, Flint, you know, places that I've lived. It's like we could use these types of activities. So, you know, again, thank you for your foresight and giving, because I'm sure it's helping a lot of folks.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I think the Baltimore school is really cool because Carlos Raba, the guy who started it with me, he's one of my best friends from early on in jiu-jitsu, and he's an immigrant himself. His father was killed in Mexico when he was just a baby, and you know, he came here as a political refugee. He worked his way up through some grocery store jobs, eventually opened Clavel, a restaurant in Baltimore that's pretty successful. And you know, he's a prime example of someone who didn't wait to get rich to make a difference. Like, he didn't have a lot of money, he didn't have really any savings. He just thought, you know, I want to give back first. I don't want to wait. And so many people, I feel like, are waiting for that magical day. Oh, when I'm 75 and I'm retired, now I'm going to give back. And it's like, no, you're not. You're just going to have no energy. You're going to probably give the money to your kids, or you're going to die unexpectedly between now and then. And you're going to die with that regret that you never actually did the thing you wanted to do. So I have a lot of respect for Carlos, although we fight most days like brothers. I have a lot of respect for him kind of doing that, because it's easy to give $1 million away when you're a billionaire. It's hard when you have $5,000 in your bank to decide to start a nonprofit and give up so much of your time and your earning potential and everything in the prime of your life to do that.
Oh yeah. I wonder, like with doing that too, you know, was there any nervousness with that? You know, like fear, like what, you know, if there's fumbles, or, you know, did you guys just go into it, you know, just like, look, this has to work? Yeah, there's no fear to it.
Yeah, I think with the gym stuff, it's like once you get started, it's hard to turn back. You know, you sign a lease on a building, or you start construction, or you buy mats. Like, you're kind of one foot in front of the other. So I think that is the good news, is once you take the plunge. I sort of stopped talking to people who have reached out over the years and have said something to the effect of, hey, I want to start a nonprofit jiu-jitsu gym. I'd like to talk to you. And my question is always like, well, what have you done so far? When the answer is like nothing, I just don't take that meeting, because I literally get like 100 requests of that per year, right? And my thought is like, if you've put time and effort in and you've done the paperwork and you've got started and you've signed the lease, and now you have a question like, hey, I'm opening up next week and I have some questions, that's a fair reach out. But I think so many people in life are looking for that easy button, especially about like business or nonprofit or whatever it is, and they're just not doing it. And it's not fair to take time away from the people who are actually doing things to try to solve that problem when you haven't put any like serious effort or skin in the game yourself. And so I would just encourage people to kind of get started. It's not that complicated, and most of the resources in the world, between AI and YouTube and the internet and everything else, like, you kind of should be able to find a lot of this stuff out.
Yeah, there is that thing with, I know, with Google now, AI. I think AI helps a whole lot more, because it used to be like, you Google something, you get so many different answers. That was always, you know, my fear with things. I would Google something and you see 5 different answers, and all you know, kind of get you to the end point, but, you know, different ways. It almost became overwhelming. Now with AI, it almost kind of like, it just kind of does it for you, and it says like, here's the, you know, the basic, This is what you need. And I think that's, kind of the heart of most things now is just keep it simple.
Right.
You don't have to overcomplicate things. You don't have to think, well, I want to start this. And then you look 10 steps ahead instead of just looking at step one, which, like you say, YouTube videos, AI, things like that will get you that first step. And once the ball starts rolling, it sounds like everything's a go.
Exactly. Yep.
So with you in martial arts in general, when did that start for you? And at what point, during that journey did, you have that drive to give back?
So when I was a kid, I grew up in York, Pennsylvania, and it's, like a pretty segregated area. White people lived in the suburbs, black and brown people lived in the city type, area that I'm sure so many people can either visualize or grew up in themselves. And it was a very, I don't want to say racist area, but it was certainly not the most socially conscious area of the world to grow up. And my dad was in the military. My dad was pretty liberal, left-leaning guy. And he used to always tell me and my sister when we would drive in different parts of the city, he'd be like, I just want you to know, what you're hearing other people say is not true. These people don't have jobs. They're not bad people, which is a lot of, I think, the narrative when you live in an area like that, these people are bad, these people are good, right? Based on how they live, what they look like, etc. And that really stuck with me kind of my whole life, was that really it's about opportunity and it's about jobs. We're not born a certain way. Then I got out of college and I started, finally found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It didn't really click right away, but it clicked after a number of years after sort of seeing and living in the Bay Area, where people were not necessarily doing great with their money in terms of how they were allocating it. You had a lot of money going to social programs that I didn't think were working. And then one day I was talking to a friend of mine who was basically middle class, and he said, we don't have enough money to put our two twin daughters into jiu-jitsu. And I was like, well, why not? You have a job, your wife has a job. And he said, well, we pay for soccer, we pay for swimming, we have Bay Area rent, we have our cars. And he's like, there's just not $500 a month or whatever it is left over to put two kids into jiu-jitsu. And then I remembered back to my karate days when I had tried to take karate as a kid, and my parents kind of pushing me away from it after that trial class and thinking, oh yeah, they didn't have the money to pay for it either. Would I have done martial arts my whole life if I would have had the money for it? So that's when it really dawned on me, this isn't just kids who are living below the poverty line. Even a lot of lower middle class and middle class families don't have that incremental income in today's world to pay for these things. And so then kids are losing out on the opportunity to start training. And that's really when it kind of clicked in my head of hey, we could solve a pretty simple problem here with a pretty simple solution.
Yeah, that conversation just came up in our household yesterday, actually. So my daughter and my daughter's 9, and I've been training jiu-jitsu, since, she was born, right before she was born. And, my wife and I've always had conversations about her training, just getting her into jiu-jitsu one way or the other. And I mentioned to my daughter over the weekend, I think, we might be ready to kind of look at, maybe getting you into jiu-jitsu if you're interested. And she was like, yeah, I'm interested, Dad. But Mom says it's expensive. I was like, yeah, it is, but we can figure something out. And then we're sitting there watching the Minecraft movie, and my daughter just in the middle of the movie goes, Dad, I want to bring up what you mentioned last night. And I was like, what I mentioned last night, that's tons of things. I say a lot of stuff, kid. She was like, jiu-jitsu. So, she's sitting between her mother and I. She goes, Mommy says it's expensive, and I don't know if we can do it. And then my wife then goes, yeah, I mean, it's a grip, if both of you are going to do it, and even to the point where I was like, well, look, I mean, I'll step down, I'll let the kid get in, she's 9, let's see what she can go with. And I can always find other sources, and just, popping around here and there. But the income just being kind of that point, it's a real thing. I even have friends, adults who they're interested, but as soon as they come in, they do the trial and they don't show back up, I talk to them later, like, yeah, what's up? You want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I could really afford that right now with, everything that's going on, whether they're trying to buy a house or getting a new car or something, one thing or the other. And for a lot of folks, if they're not in it, like a lot of us that have been doing it for a while, this is just part of our thing. Whereas like somebody new coming in, this is just looked at as extracurricular, where it's not worth it to them. So it's like, and I see a lot of folks. I have a friend, she collabs me in a lot of different posts, and one recently that she had tagged me in was asking if jiu-jitsu had become a sport of exclusivity. And I saw someone comment basically saying like, look, if you want it bad enough, you're going to go get it. And I think about, again, us that's been training for long enough, that's true for us because we're here. Whereas like, again, you get my buddy Steve, who's never done a martial art, and, he looks at it, he's interested, but that's not one of those things of like, oh, I want it bad enough, because $200 odd a month, for him to go get beat up for the first 6 months, sounds insane, from the outside looking in.
Yeah, for sure.
And how long, like, have you been training jiu-jitsu? Because I saw, I believe you got your black belt in 2019.
Yeah, I've been training 19 years or so now.
Okay.
Yeah, I started in DC at the Yamasaki Academy in Rockville, Maryland, and then I moved out to California and started training in Half Gracie, and that's where I got my belt.
That's cool. Had you, along your path, done any other, combat sports in there, like Muay Thai, boxing, or anything? Just strictly.
I did a little bit of Muay Thai when I was there at the Rockville Academy, but for a year or two. But I always gravitated to jiu-jitsu. Always liked the idea of like having very little risk of like brain trauma and getting hurt. And my son actually has something called like proprioception, I believe it is, where it's like you feel the need when you get excited to touch and grab other things. So he gets in trouble at school because he hugs people a lot. He's very like emotional with that. And I think I have the same thing. Like, I think I have that like sensory overload. Like, even though I never wrestled growing up, I always enjoyed sort of like playing around with my friends and grabbing and touching and everything. And I think, jiu-jitsu just sort of like naturally felt very normal to me when I started. I was never like freaked out by the close contact and sort of the intimacy of it. And now, I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way in some extent. Like, there's people who study jiu-jitsu to get better, and they watch instructionals and they practice and they go to open mat and they drill a technique 1,000 times, and maybe they're getting better at their craft, if you will. But like, I'm the opposite. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff hardly. I go to class or I go to open mat and I'm addicted to the high. I'm addicted to the feeling after I train. I'm addicted to like sweating and sitting on the mats and talking to my friends and coming home and eating a good meal or going to get a coffee or whatever it is. And for me, it's like a positive drug. It's an outlet. It's something my body, I think, since almost half my life now, I've been training, that I think my body doesn't really know how to do without it. And so it's really become a positive addiction, for lack of a better word, for me.
Cool. Yeah, that's similar to me, I guess, because as you're describing, I was like, yeah, that's kind of like me. Like, I record my rounds, and I even record when the coach is breaking down the technique. I try to watch them and absorb from it, but yeah, being out there on the mats is just what I just feel so much more comfortable with, so much better, having a contact versus now. I have a lot of teammates, they do a lot of studying. They're like, they'll talk about different grapplers and specific matches. And I'm just like I watch the things, but I don't absorb it like that. I'm a kinetic learner. I have to do the thing and then just kind of fill it out.
Kind of reminds me of the golfers, right? Have you ever seen somebody golf and they shoot 10 over par or whatever, and they go out the next day and they shoot 15 over par and they're pissed off, they're slamming their club on the ground, they're upset after. And I don't know, I talk to people like that in jiu-jitsu too. They're like, oh, I got tapped by that guy today, I'm pissed off. And I'm always like, who gives a shit? Like, do you make money doing jiu-jitsu? Like, is this how you feed your kids? Like, why are you possibly upset about this, that God or whatever you believe in has given you the ability to go wrestle around on the mat with other guys and get a good workout in and learn self-defense, and you're pissed off because you got tapped by some guy when you were trying a new move? Like, it doesn't really resonate with me. I can't understand why people make it like that for them, except like the top people in the world who are literally like putting food on their table that way. So
yeah,
I know I'm not in the majority with some of this thinking. Like, the way I train, I wouldn't recommend if you want to get good. My mindset of like sort of being willing to tap very easily and not take it too seriously. But my goal is the winning formula here will be, am I on the mat when I'm 70 or not? And if I'm right and I can be, then I'll feel like I won. I've seen a lot of people burn out from overtraining, from overcompeting, from overlifting, and just sort of like not knowing when to give it a break. And I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, it sounds like, you go out there and you have fun. You're enjoying it. I had a conversation with another grappler a couple years back, and we're talking about laughing on the mat. And I spoke to another friend, and the conversation with the one person, they're very in favor of it. Just go out there, have fun, smile, because again, at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun, And then I spoke to another friend about it, and they were very much like, no, there's no laughing out there. It has to be like super serious. And I mean, everyone's different, right? We all kind of approach it in a different way, but I don't know.
By the way, that's crazy. Even when I went and trained with John Danaher a couple months ago in Austin when I was there, like, he's still like joking around a little bit, and like, yeah, it's a serious class, and like, he's definitely teaching seriously good technique, but you can like make a joke. Like, he's not a robot. You can sit with him and talk with him. You can laugh, like, you can smile. Like, it's not like a no smiles thing. So I don't know, like, even the best in the world are not saying that like smiles make you a bad grappler. So I'm not sure if I would take it that far.
I think from my one friend's perspective, they look at it like if you're smiling and laughing, you're not taking it serious. And it's like, I mean, I take it serious enough. If I get armbarred, I don't want to get armbarred again. I'm still going to laugh, and I laugh at the fact that I got caught in it, even though I know, like, I probably saw it coming. I could have avoided it, but, I just, got stuck. Or, if I get choked, I think also for me, laughter is kind of I'm nervous, Well,
it's also a tool for longevity. Like, when I'm joking with someone before I train with them that I don't know, I'm signaling to them that I'm not here for a fight. Like, I'm here, and just so you know, I'm not taking this overly serious. So like, please don't try to do something that's going to injure either of us. That's basically what I'm saying. Like, we're all communicating with sort of nonverbal cues on the mat, especially when we go to a gym where we don't know those people. And I think like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to like see if you're going to walk around, you're going to be on steroids, you're going to be shredded, and you're going to have a scowl on your face, and you're going to be, pissed off when you get tapped, and you're going to be punching the mat. Like, probably not going to want to train with that guy. And also probably going to train super hard in the sense of like, I'm going to go play my A game. I'm going to make sure I keep everything tight. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to tap. Like, as soon as he gets into any remotely close to a submission, I'm going to tap, because I can't risk this person ripping my foot off or whatever. So I think there's a lot of like positive signal actual that comes from like that, as long as you're not fake, as long as you're not pretending to be nice and then going and like ripping a heel hook. If like that's really truly your demeanor and you're taking it both ways, then I think that's totally fair. So I guess in some ways you could argue then you appreciate the guy who doesn't smile, doesn't joke, doesn't have fun, because at least you know where you stand probably in that role. But I don't know. I just think as jiu-jitsu broadens out, it was 30 years ago, it was just like a culture of crazy guys who were the toughest kind of the tough, and who wanted that type of smoke, if you want to call it that, every day. But now you have lots of black belts who are over 50 years old, who have been training for 30 years, who have kids, and you've got little people and big people and girls and hobbyists, and like it's no longer jiu-jitsu from 30 years ago where everyone wants to be an MMA fighter basically, and everybody's super tough and everybody's fought to the death in class every day. So I think, you got to have some realistic understanding of where the sport's evolving, right? And like even in your own gym, like who's who, and who's winning just by being on the mat that day, and show a little bit of respect. Like don't be some 20-year-old blue belt who's pissed off because some 55-year-old black belt who's out of shape, is not giving you the hardest time. Like it's just totally delusional thinking in my book. And that's how people get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I whenever I see, that grappler that looks serious on the mat, I'll roll with anyone. I never turn down any role that, that approaches me. But yeah, you see that super serious, person. I kind of shed the laughter for the moment, at least for, those 6 minutes that we're going to roll. I'll kind of be a little serious, but when I'm rolling, I like to smile. I like to, I hum songs sometimes, again, if I feel like I'm in danger, I might, start to sing a little bit. But I remember the first time I competed, I went in I didn't want to talk to any of my opponents. I didn't want to see them because if I got to talk to them and making jokes with them, I don't know if I would be serious anymore. I don't know if I'd be there to compete and be like, oh, these guys are my friends now. We can be playful. Meanwhile, they're trying to put me to sleep. But, looking at it now in hindsight, I was like, oh, I probably could have, talked to those guys and it would have been fine. But, if I knew then what I know now, maybe I would have approached it different. But, now anytime I see anyone in the gym, I try to get a laugh out of anyone before we roll. Just some kind of silly chuckle, put myself down in some weird way just to see if I can kind of get a reaction. Most times people are pretty cool about it, but if I do run into somebody that's super serious, it's like, okay, I don't know if they know this, but there's that Saturday class where we're all, it's the old guy class. We're all here. This is a hobby. And every so often you'll get, just that one guy. And, you know how to approach it though. Instead of just saying, okay, let me match his energy, because if this is, I think we had someone visiting and he was really cool. He was cool. He was a young guy. He was an MMA fighter. And he was visiting. So, he was very respectful, but I remember approaching him and just thinking man, I hope he knows I'm 47 and my hip hurt a little bit this morning. I slept wrong. And he was really, really cool. But he did have that look of I'm all business. And it's like, oh shit, I read the book wrong. There it is. He's a nice guy. And he even cracked a joke when I almost got him down. And I was like, oh, I was hoping. And he chuckled. I was like, okay, we're good. We're safe then. And then he proceeded to choke me after that. I was like, oh, he's definitely a nice guy. At least he let go.
Yeah, exactly.
In your experience coming up, did you compete much, or did you dabble and then just say, you know what, not my cup of tea?
No, what happened is when I started training at the Yamasaki Academy about a year later, a little less than a year later, my friend Curtis, he started training and he ended up winning white belt world championships. And he was one of the guys who I kind of was talking about who overtrained. He started training judo and he started weightlifting. He was training jiu-jitsu 5 days a week. And he became really obsessed with competing. And he ended up blowing out his back and hurting his neck. And he never was able to compete after he got it, or never was able to train after he got his blue belt. And so I looked at that and I was like, you know what? That is exactly what I don't want to happen, right? Meaning that accomplishment meant nothing for him compared to the idea of being able to stay on the mat and train. And I just kind of made that decision, not that it has to be one or the other, but I made a really conscious decision at that point of that means nothing to me. I'm not going to make my money and my living doing jiu-jitsu. I want to be the guy who's on the mat till I'm 70. So I'm going to go the complete opposite way. And I always trained at really good schools. And frankly, I was never that good. And what I mean by that is I was always good enough to train with the good guys, but I was never the guy winning and dominating and the best guy in the school by any means. And so in my mind, it was I kind of was at competition every day, especially when I went out to Half Gracie and they had these massive mature schools with tons of really high level black belts. I mean, I was just getting crushed, right, as a purple belt, as a brown belt, etc. So, yeah, I kind of never really competed through my journey, and just focused on sort of like this different thing, which is just stay consistent on the mat. And then once I started Guardian, obviously that took a lot of my attention, was just building the program, building the nonprofit, building the schools, etc.
Sure. Yeah, the competition mindset, though, great for those who do it. It's not for everyone, especially like you said, when you saw a teammate just really wreck themselves getting there. I don't know. There's always that stop point in my mind where it's like, do I need to be known as the best in the world? At this point, or at this rank, or whatever it may be, or the best in the region, or the best in the neighborhood even. But, with the ideal of competing and everything, I understand that, it helps, to accelerate your game, go into a competition. But, sometimes slow and steady, that wins the race as well. You got to be the fastest one, got to be the best in the world. You just got to, like you said, be able to hold your own with the guys in the room.
Well, also it's like, why did we get into this, right? Like, maybe you got into it to win the IBJJF, or, fight to win, or the, whatever your tournament or super fight is, by an advantage or by points or whatever. I don't care about any of that, right? I got into this because I wanted to be able to defend myself. I wanted to be in shape. I wanted to be strong. Like, I didn't get into this because I wanted to like learn a new point scoring system and win a tournament or win a match. And so if that's why you did it, great. But I don't know, for me, I feel like I really accomplished my goal, which was like, hey, I don't want to be stuck on the bottom with some guy beating me up or holding me down and not know how to get out of it. And I, want to stay in shape throughout my mid years, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, whatever, and have something that doesn't end like a high school sport does for so many people. And so for me, I feel like I'm already winning. But I think a lot of people get wrapped up in this sort of, they forget what's important. Most people got into it for that reason, and then all of a sudden they get really entrapped into the thing that, again, for me, I don't think is as important. But that's just, my opinion. And I think all the tournaments are awesome, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying like don't compete. I think it's great. I'm just saying that what's the reason you got into it? Don't lose necessarily focus from that if you want to stay true to that reason and feel good and feel like you have a sense of accomplishment from it.
Yeah, I was just recently asked why did I start training. And every time I really think about that question, I like, the further away I get from, that point, always kind of forget. I mean, I enjoy it. It's like I came in, just kind of like, I'm into MMA. So maybe I'll give this a try. I work out. Maybe I need something different for my body. Maybe I need a new challenge, things like that. And I think along the way, you hear about people competing, or at least I did. I was like, oh, maybe I'll try that. Let me challenge myself. And, I found out pretty quickly, no, I don't like this. Like this is not my thing. Like I always say I accidentally won my first match. I didn't even know I won. Like the guy like let go of a bow and arrow, and I spun and turned around into side control. And I didn't even know. And then the timer goes off, and they're like, I won 3-2. I was like, oh shit. And then, in the finals, I think beat 5-0. And after that, I was just kind of like, you know what? I think it's just the jitters. It's just the jitters. So I'll do it again. And then I just never again wanted to do it. I was like, I don't think this is for me. But it's not for everyone. And every once in a while, I try to work myself up into that ideal of competing. And then I wonder, it's like, I think there's something in the back of my mind of like, not even a thing of like, what if I lose? So I don't care about losing. I mean, I get tapped like, every class a lot. I'm not sure what it is, but I think at the end of the day, I just enjoy going there and training. I enjoy the connection with my teammates. I enjoy helping my teammates. If they're going to compete, I'm there for them to work what they need to work. But whenever we're at open mat, they're like, "Hey, Dante, what are you working on?" I don't know. What are you working on? Like let's help you, and then I'll piggyback off of that. Because I don't know, that's just my love for it. Though I guess is like I want to help others get better, and then you know, I'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
And when you look at, I guess, jiu-jitsu, you know, kind of taking a step back, what's something that jiu-jitsu has taught you that I guess translates outside, you know, away from the mats?
I mean, obviously so many things. I would say that probably like being stuck in really bad positions is one thing, meaning like you get stuck in some pretty awful positions in jiu-jitsu, and a lot of the way to get out of it is to relax, take a few deep breaths, start to actually like use your brain, don't panic. And I would say like that's something that happens a lot in business and in life. You start to think everything's so important, or you get yourself in a sticky situation, and you kind of remember like, oh man, I was like getting bow and arrow choked the other day by some guy that's 40 pounds heavier than me, and like somehow life continued to go on after that. So maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah, like I try to explain that to one of my friends the other day. So I do another podcast, and we're having some equipment problems, and he's freaking out. I'm trying to be cool. It's like, I don't know, I've been in worse positions, but he didn't connect, like, you know, how am I able to be, you know, calm in that situation? Whereas like, look, dude, I've had people just trying to like put me to sleep. Like, I'll be all right. Like, we're like this podcast isn't going to be, it's not the end of the world if we can't get, you know, the soundboard working right. But yeah, I guess there is kind of that calmness that we do get from just bad situations on the mats, you know, whatever it may be, whether we're mounted, having our backs taken, or being in a bad submission that, you know, we're working our way out of. And as far as like, I know you're like you're part of a Big Brothers, you know, Big Sisters program and helping out there, and working your way into, you know, the Guardian gym and you know, setting this all up. I would imagine obviously that played a big factor in there. As far as emotional and social and emotional impact, like how does that translates to, you know, your work on the mats with your different students and stuff?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I completely get the question, but I was doing the Big Brothers Big Sisters program before I started Guardian, and you know, I had sort of, I think, that classic Big Brothers Little Brothers dynamic. You know, I was a younger guy without kids who was working a regular job. My little brother didn't have a father at all in the picture, and I think he was maybe 12 or so at the time when we stopped working together. But it was just so obvious what he needed to me, right? Which is like too much time on the video games, had very little like control over his emotions, would get really angry really quick, didn't have an outlet. But his mom was sort of, you know, looking at him as like, you're about to be the like father figure of this family, right? You have a little brother. And so you got a kid has like no male reinforcement at home, and he has no sense of reality of like what actually being tough is. He thinks being tough is just getting angry and throwing the video game controller or whatever it is. And one day I took him to jiu-jitsu. He got tapped out really badly not badly, but like, you know, really quickly by this guy who actually had really long hair, this kid, and he looked like a girl. And so he thought he had gotten tapped out by a girl, and he ran outside and he punched this fence post or this sign, this metal sign. And I just like the light bulb went off in my head. I was like, my God, like this is just so obvious why we need jiu-jitsu and for these kids. And, you know, I tried to get his mom to do it and get behind it, but she just really wasn't that into it. And there were scheduling issues, and she wasn't sure he wanted to go, and all these different reasons. But I kind of just said, you know, hey, I can't do both of these programs at the same time, but like if I do the Guardian program, I can get more scale out of it and I can help more kids versus like trying to force this one family, this one kid to go do the thing that I care about. I can just build it and, you know, help many, many families through that. And I think that's kind of the sad thing is like, you want to help every family, you want to help every kid, but at some point you got to figure out like where you can make the most impact and do it in the most scalable way. And for me, that was by opening the gym and having assistant instructors and mentors and coaches then all of a sudden it's not just you doing it, right? There's a whole network of people doing it, and they're bringing in kids. Now there's kids in the gym that you don't even know and that you don't even personally have a relationship with. But there's other people that do, and other people that are helping them. And I think that's, the sad reality of life is you got to sort of pick and choose. You can't fix every family. You can't help every kid, but you create the best structure you can, the best ecosystem that you can to help the most amount of people possible. And that's kind of what Guardian is now, right? We open gyms, or we help gyms to become Guardians all over the world. And the whole idea is that they won't all be perfect. Every instructor might not be the greatest. Not every kid in the town is going to get help, but you keep planting these seeds all over. And in some places it really works. And for some kids, it really works. And it's creating that opportunity.
Good. Cool. And I imagine that you've had former students, former youth students come back and help out.
Yeah, so we don't operate, to be clear, like our original gym in Oakland. So we shut that gym down in order to basically, when COVID, sort of the end of COVID, we transitioned to this different model, and we thought let's take our talents to helping all these gyms around the world instead of focusing on this one gym. And, it kind of had already had obviously this big breakup and rough patch through COVID. You lost a lot of members and, kids and adults and everything that were training there anyway. So it's kind of a natural break in the action to do that. But, we have some kids, we have some pretty amazing stories, actually. We have a kid who, we had talked to his mom, and we'd said, hey, why isn't he coming in the gym? We haven't seen him in a while. So she forced him to come back in the gym the next day. And that day, his friends all got shot on the street corner. One of them died. One of them got injured that he was supposed to be with. So that was probably a life-saving, or certainly a life-altering, thing that happened by having the gym there for him and having a place for him to go. We had a kid that was a week away from joining a gang, and we found out later. And today he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's thriving, and he's lost 100 pounds. And, you wouldn't recognize him from the 15-year-old kid that walked in the doors 10 years ago. So, a lot of this takes time, right, to kind of see how things are going to unfold and what's going to happen. And it's not the story. I have no world champions to show you that I know of that have come from Guardian, right? I don't know if we've built a single, I don't think we have a single person who's won some incredible competition or won the ADCC Open or whatever it is, but we've got a lot of stories of kids who have made their life better, which is really the whole point.
Good. Yeah, it definitely shows, there's a, more of an importance of connection over competition, for sure, which I think is one of the more important things to get out of jiu-jitsu, is just, having a safe haven, and then also having, a connection to a community that cares. Because, you're going in there and, you don't feel safe, you don't feel comfortable, you're not going to stick around. So, that's, an awesome thing, dude. Awesome. And last question, with you running Guardian Gym, as a nonprofit, how do you manage, the balance between training, as you mentioned, earlier, being out there training, and then, kind of running day-to-day, operations that come with that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a guy who has been running the gym now for a while, or running the organization for a while, named Calder, who's amazing. He does all of our photography, our videography, our social media. We're not a complicated organization in the sense we have it's a lot of stuff that we do as far as the content out there and the school outreach, but it's not overly complicated in the sense of what we're doing or making, or the sauce for how we grow. So he's done a great job with that. And, for me, that allows me to be really focused on sort of the strategy part of what we're doing, and being a sounding board for making those right decisions, being able to get out there in the community, be training, be talking to people, coming up with new ideas. And, that's where a lot of our positivity comes from, is people who are already in our network saying, oh, my friend has a social project in Brazil. And then you meet that guy and you train with him a few times and you learn more about it. And you're like, oh, wow, you only have 8 kids training there. Like, what can we do to make that program a guardian program and take it to 100 kids? And then we find out that they need gis and they need this and that. And we say, okay, well, what if we could help with that part, right? If gis are the big issue for that particular program, how can we get those 100 gis, right? And then that becomes sort of focus number one for that program. Then we take a step back and say, okay, now we got those gis that you said was the problem. Let's see how the program evolves from there. And then we keep almost like an investor, right? We try to like plant these seeds and give people what they need, but it's not a one size fits all for like every school. So every day is different. Every conversation is different. Everybody has different needs, and we're here to just see where we can help, right? So it makes it easy for me because I don't have to wake up every day and do the same stuff. And then because now that I work at Flow Grappling for the last 90 days or so, you know, by working at Flow, obviously, like I'm meeting even more people that are in the space and getting to know, you know, more folks who I didn't know before just through the Guardian side. And sometimes that can be helpful as well, and vice versa, right? Guardian opens doors for Flow and Flow opens doors for Guardian, and sort of everybody wants something in jiu-jitsu. Is it like the commercial side that you want? Like, hey, you want to be on WNOs and, you know, you want a content series on Flow, or is it like, hey, you have all that stuff already and you're trying to figure out how you get back, and Guardian's an avenue to get back. So those two things really are symbiotic now in my jiu-jitsu life, right?
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, that's actually pretty awesome. I actually did forget, David did mention Flow Grappling, and just thinking about all the Guardian and then just everything with that, I completely slipped my mind there. But that's awesome that it kind of all you know, works into each other and just seems, you know, effortless for you. So that's good.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So Ben, this has been awesome, dude. Thank you very much for making the time and sitting here and chatting with me, you know, for, you know, the better part of an hour. Before we get out of here, you have any links or shout outs or anything that you'd like to leave the listeners with here?
Yeah, I would just say that you can go to Guardian Gym, at Guardian Gym is our Instagram, or guardiangym.org is our website if you want to learn more about what we're doing there and get involved or support in any way. It's a project that I don't make any money doing. I don't have a salary. I don't get paid. I just care about getting more kids into jiu-jitsu. So it's not one of those nonprofits. And yeah, I would say on the Flow side, a lot of people don't realize this, but you know, by having a Flow Grappling subscription, you are actually really helping to push the sport forward, right? You're helping it to not go into exclusive contracts with one company that's trying to take it over. You're helping put on really great super fights. You're paying partners like ADCC and the IBJJF to put on better productions, which means that athletes can get paid. So, you know, I think a lot of people don't realize this. They spend $500-$600 a month training jiu-jitsu, traveling to tournaments, buying special soap, going to seminars, taking privates. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, the $12.50 annualized for my Flow Grappling subscription a year is just so expensive. But it's like, that's what's really pushing the sport forward, right? Is buying a ticket to CJI, right? That helps those guys put on that show. You know, buying a subscription to Flow Grappling, that helps Flow Grappling pay for WNOs and offer your friends and training partners fights and opportunities for content. And so I think just, you know, that's one of the ways I think we can all be good stewards of jiu-jitsu, right? Is whether it's helping kids through Guardian, buying subscriptions, buying a ticket to CJI, you know, going to ADCC, whatever it is, like you don't realize like you're the one that's powering the sport forward, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. That, you know, pay for the subscription for the 1 year. That's, you know, just that's one competition. You know, at the rate that actually, I think competitions are a lot more now. So, you know, just look at it that way too.
That's what a competition is. You're right. It's just it's not a crazy amount of money for all you get.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, especially you know, there's so much content there. When I was on there, it was almost overwhelming. I was like, I don't even know where to start. Like, you know, I just started. I was like, well, where are my teammates at? Let me look at my teammates. You know, watch their matches. So, I mean, yeah, it's a great deal. So. Definitely, you know, listeners out there, you know, if you're not on it, go get on it. Go check it out. So for the listeners, thank you. I want to give a big shout out to my crew there at Nerd Rage Radio, Bobby, Chris, Joe, Maryland Phil, Ricky, Tiki, Maryland Phil, Farrell, everybody over there. Thank you. If it weren't for Nerd Rage Radio, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. So thank you to those guys. Also, I want to shout out my other podcast, So You Like Horror. If you like scary movies, go check that out. I'm not quite sure where we are in terms of the theme. By the time this episode comes out, we're still doing remakes versus originals. So we should be doing the Dawn of the Dead upcoming. So go check that out. So You Like Horror on Instagram, all the words separated underscores. And you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you listen to this podcast, it's there. And also to you all the listeners, thank you. If y'all have any questions, concerns, criticisms, please feel free to reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram and Off the Mats Podcast, also on Instagram. Last but not least, I want to thank my guest here today, Mr. Ben Kovacs. Thank you very much for making the time, and thank you for sharing your insight and your journey through the nonprofit and jiu-jitsu in general. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem, my friend. And to the listeners again, thank you. You guys know what it is. If you all keep listening, we're going to keep making these shows. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.